Attention gamers. Now that Worlds is over and the fairy tale faker story that we'll all tell our chronically online kids about one day is just a memory, we are back to the reality that League of Legends for the working class feels like a cactus enema, as countless posts are talking about how most games are decided by which team doesn't have someone tilt give up or flat out leave the game, and while I've seen this in my own games as well, I've held out hope that climbing can still feel good in a game where both teams have 5 players actually trying to win, and my last game where I was more fed than Nikocado Avocado before he was 2 steps ahead was going to prove this, as I was going to show that my own individual performance can still make the difference, only to have those hopes crushed by what happened next. Quick word from the company shoving singles down my bra: Opera GX. The free-to-use internet browser designed specifically for gamers. For starters, since I have Vanguard just teabagging my computer's resources, I at least can make sure my browser isn't hogging anything by limiting its usage. The left menu is to serve as a fast pass line to all the features that us degenerates rely on regularly, and the themes of the browser make it a beauty to look at. There are tons of League mods that you can install for free which transform your experience. I swear the League themes on this browser are better kept than League of Legends itself, but the tool also loves saying anything you can do I can do better by allowing Chrome users to import any and every extension that they have from that bloated browser straight into this. So with that, check my link below. Give your browser a League of Legends makeover and try Opera GX for free today. Alright, now I'd like to set the scene of this game by starting with a quick preview of their mid laner's skill level so that we all know what we are dealing with here, and as you can see, it's someone who is clearly IQ challenged towards his wards and is still learning that there is a role called jungler in this game. I myself was playing the little Amelia Earhart simp because I'm giving this meta slave strategy a try to make up for the fact that I commit to fights worse than Moon commits to his marriage, as the auto that was supposed to kill them all cop called in sick last minute, but luckily I brought a condom to work today, which meant that Blonde was getting the dick in with no repercussions. And then I guess you give Grumpy Gramps a taste of homicide and he can't stop himself until everyone around him is dead, so we start with 2 assists. Then back to the lobotomy survivor to get a bit more context into the skill level of the Gary to my Ash Ketchum in this one, and you can see his intelligence is not scaling. Meanwhile there Caitlyn is being all teasy trying to lure us into river, and I'm not trying to play that shit, but Swain sees 2 young chicks and just starts NPC walking in that direction, so I bail him out by agreeing to drop my Q on the ground behind them, and then I keep tinkling on them until eventually the one with the gun pisses off. I do chase and attempt to do something flashy, but according to some bullshit known as math, this Lux had more health than the damage my ult did, so unfortunately for all of us she was still alive. Checking in on definitely not Cho'Gath, who is definitely not looking like someone who is about to 1v9 hard carry a game, as he flashes to get a bite out of some sardine before facing the consequences of overstaying in lane like a total dipshit. I get back to lane just in time to catch a wave, but then I get the feeling that these shitters are still waiting for their Uber to take them back to base, so I stalk the blonde like the pint-sized racist NASCAR accent pilot I am, and find her just in time to show her the power of the penile attachment on my chopper, which ends up awarding me my first Gus Fring of the day.
Explain yourself.
Back to the guy playing this fatherless champ, and you can see he is still more outnumbered than a rye bread in a Chex Mix bag, which if you're counting puts this weaponized Barney at an impressive 1-4 start. It was at this time when I had my first introduction with him. He smelled of a fucking sweaty middle school play prop closet, and I wasn't impressed at his attempts to make me jump, not to mention his initial reaction to getting gooch grabbed by my support was to run back into the 2v1 danger. I do have to admit he marinated in that bad decision for longer than I expected, as he even flashed further away from safety before dying. Then my support was like, hey, I already booted up the swirling herpes hurricane around me, we might as well use it on Rifle Rhonda over here, who was in the middle of quite the dilemma. She was trying to decide if her health or her IQ was lower, so I said let me get a closer look to see before I deemed it a tie. At this point a good player would base while muttering something smart about tempo, but I saw a baton twirler alone, and knowing that my Tinder profile was weak and I lacked the confidence to make my move when a girl's friends are around, I decided to take advantage of the opportunity, which was better than I expected, until what always happens, some guy with a bigger quote-unquote spear comes in and steals the girl, but I wasn't letting that happen this time. That said, I think we've done a proper job of establishing that this Cho'Gath couldn't solve a Rubik's Cube with a hammer and a glue stick, as this particular play puts him at a whopping 1-6 start to this game. I'm now running north to rub my wealth in everyone's face like my name's Leo and I was on season 7 of Love is Blind. But speaking of blind, have you seen my Q aim Lamau? But it didn't matter because my autos were super hot fire, not to mention their support was about as useful as a bullion cube in the ocean. Things were going the way they should when one team has 4 times the amount of kills and the bot gap was cosplaying as the Grand Canyon itself. Their guy without a weapon was bullying our guy without a functional pancreas, but I was so fed you would think Barney Stinson was describing my gameplay.
Legendary!
And Lux was always conveniently around to tip the driver who took her back to base. At this point, if you were to ask which team's ADC had played the better game thus far, I would answer that with Exhibit M-E, as I then had to flash to avoid giving an AIDS rabbit the biggest paycheck of his life. Eventually our fat as fuck alcoholic Haggard caught the little Martian and I was there to execute him before reminding this Caitlyn that she shouldn't be out of the crib, and at this point it's hard to think their team had any chance of winning this game with their bot lane. But it was at this point where their borderline griefing mid laner was definitely not about to once again surround himself in a dumb as shit fight, but this time he definitely was not gonna get ass blasted into a kill that he didn't deserve. And yeah, sure, he was gaining size and he did just get his second kill of the night, but I laid out the foundation that this dude was clearly inept in the pressing QWER camp, so there was no reason to worry, right? After all, I was living an ADC main's wet dream right now, as I could skirt into melee mode against a Jax and still pop his cherry without a care in the world. At one point, because this is the most pissy of pits in terms of elo, we were in a full-blown team fight over what appears to be a blast cone as I sniped the rabbit, and then upon remembering that I have the positional awareness of a water bottle, I opted into hanging out with the 2 clowns, not to be confused with a Shaco ult, without thinking that the moronic 2 and 6 Cho'Gath would ever do 60% of my health in a single feast. I rest and ran mid to immediately seek my revenge, vowing to not position like a glass jar of a dipshit ever again around him, as no knock-up of his would touch me and I would be assisting the slimy trident cuck who just came from a P. Diddy party and taking him down. It was a small setback and I was embarrassed that I had thrown a deathless game down the drain, but considering their bot lane had so much to be humble about, I had no doubt in my mind this game would end in a win, as it should, when I've practically removed 2 of their players from participating in the game. But then, as I was forced to defend a quick push mid by Puff the Feeding Dragon, I was reminded of a cruel reality in this game. I was 16-2 while he had only 5 kills at this point and 30 less farm than me, in a performance where I showed how many times he died and missed entire waves that were shoved under his tower, yet he still had a level advantage over me and so much defensives that I knew I couldn't touch him alone, yet he had demonstrated that he could eat me in less than 2 bites. And I know there will be coping cockholes in the comments that disagree, but that's just fucking piss-awful game design. But I made the best of a shitty situation by politely urinating on this cop while ignoring the giant Godzilla trying to distract me long enough to take her down again. I was public enemy number 1, which made sense, and it was becoming apparent that I should not be walking anywhere alone, as every Tom, Dick and weaponless Willie would be taking a swing at me, so luckily I learned that lesson without dying, but I was starting to worry. Not about their Caitlyn, of course, as the purpose of her head was nothing more than a mobile hat rack. And it's not like this Cho'Gath was becoming a better player as the game went on. He was still constantly seeing how many of us could touch him at once, while being obvious that he only wanted me, and his greediness was costing his team like it should, as we were able to jerk off Barney dicks in River to get big buffs because of it. I caught their Teemo trying to hit an Irish exit from a fight and shoot him off, and then I regrouped with my coworkers to make sure the man without a proper weapon had a proper funeral. Then it was just Tweedledee and Tweedledum, and my thought process at this point was I could see a cursor blinking in front of these bitches and I was the backspace button. I figured even if I died at this point, the fact that we had their team aced except for Mr. Definitely Not Bullshit would be enough for more than half my team to take him down and take a few big objectives. But no, the guy that was featured in a death montage for the first half of this video managed to hold off the 3 Stooges for a short eternity while managing to take one of them down. I spawned and we continued the terror against their Teemo, as Lux was continuing to just serve as a death decoration who at this point wouldn't even be allowed to list League of Legends on her resume with how little she actually was able to play in this game. Gaddy was now making Gragas look like a hobbit and I wanted no parts of that, so I took a quick detour to make sure Caitlyn had another crisp 50 seconds in black and white bench, as I wanted to distract the only people alive on their team while our Winions completed their tasks uninterrupted, but I was eaten and there was no way at this point their Godzilla Gath was going to die to a Gragas. At this point the late game was risky because I knew my team had never heard of the concept of peeling for their 25 kill carry, but in their defense I was positioning each fight like a blind fuck knuckle, so I opted into playing this fight a bit slower than the others where I would have chased to kill the squishies, but this just resulted in the guy who fed his literal dragon dick off all game 1v3ing the rest of my team. I opted into just sticking with the drunk diabetic and trying to play around the remaining objectives on the map because I knew despite how fed I was, this monstrosity literally had 10,000 health, 280 armor and the ability to do 75% of my health in one ability as a full tank. Which meant eventually he would be able to stomp down in my base as we had no option but to fold over. So yes, I'm sure there were macro gameplay decisions that I could have played better, and yeah I already know the comments deserved for not being able to close out this game. But in a silver elo game where this guy played the first 20 minutes like a feeding board certified dipshit to turn into this where he has literally no weaknesses while flat out negating the biggest lead I've ever had, I'm calling total bullshit, as a full tank with 10k HP shouldn't be topping the damage charts like this. Any team with those two cockwobble bot laners should not be able to win a game like this, and that concludes my essay on how one game ruined my remaining hope for this shithole of a game, and I don't know what I'm gonna do next. Rav out.